Hi, friends. Welcome to Mama's Got a Brand New Bag. If we've never met before, let me take a few minutes to introduce myself. My name is Charlotte Rensberger, and I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner from Michigan. I'm a wife, sister, mom, daughter, and a chronically ill woman living with Crohn's disease, short bowel syndrome, and a permanent ileostomy. Since this is only the second episode of this podcast, I wanted to share a little bit more about who I am and how I got here. I was raised in Michigan, and I'm the youngest of four. When I was in high school, I was diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease. We tried medications, but I was unresponsive, and I required surgery to create a temporary ileostomy and a J pouch. About 6 months later, I was reconnected and went into remission. At that time, I had plans to go to college to become a police officer. I was enrolled in criminal justice at a local tech center. But after my diagnosis and my surgery, my path shifted. I met so many great nurses and a few not so great nurses that nursing became my passion. I graduated from a small community college in 2003 and started my career wide eyed and caffeinated, and honestly, a little unprepared for what nursing looks like as a career. After a brief stint in adult general surgery and the ER, I found my home in pediatrics. Over the years, I stepped into both formal and informal leadership roles, completed my BSN and my MSN, and eventually returned to school again for my nurse practitioner training. As a pediatric nurse practitioner, I've worked in primary care, the newborn nursery, and now pediatric GI, caring for kids and families navigating chronic constipation, abdominal pain, nausea and vomiting, celiac disease, eosinophilic esophagitis, and disorders of the gut brain interaction, and everything in between. As a young adult, my disease management could really only be described as autopilot. I went to appointments, I took my medications when I remembered. Otherwise, I didn't really think about it. I worked night shift for years, I slept when I could, and I lived one day at a time. Kind of like how we talk to patients. Set small goals for yourself. Set up for breakfast, take a shower, get dressed, take a short walk. Chronic illness has a way of teaching you that language long before you realize how it's shaping your behavior. But chronic illness also has a way of humbling you. Over time, my disease progressed. There were flares, there were med changes, there were surgeries. There were moments of, this is not how I pictured my life. Somewhere in the middle of my 20s, I met an incredible guy named Cliffy. He's calm and steady, and I have decided to keep him forever. He has sat beside my hospital bed, endured uncomfortable ED chairs, managed complex medication schedules, and done far more than his share without ever complaining. More often than not, he's making jokes with the goal of distracting me from my real life situations with humor. We've built our life together here in Michigan, even if we root for the wrong football team. Go Irish! We became parents to two amazing kids, now a freshman in college and a sophomore in high school. And I love being a mom. You always hear that motherhood changes you, but it does in ways that I never even thought about. It deepens your empathy, it shifts your priorities. It also teaches you that you can pack snacks, diapers, stuff for work, and ostomy supplies in the same bag and still forget where you were going in the first place. Living with Crohn's while working on a Peds GI team has helped given me a perspective that I could never learn from a textbook. I know firsthand what it feels like to wait for biopsy results and cry when they're bad, to cry when they look good because you feel so miserable with no clear cause, to sit in an infusion chair for hours every month, month after month, to sit in an ED waiting room when you had plans tonight that have suddenly changed, to sit on the toilet after yet another bowel prep before a colonoscopy, and to explain your medical history again and again and again, and to grieve the body and the life that I used to have. But I also know what it feels like to rebuild, to advocate, to find strength that you didn't know you had, and to laugh through the moments of sheer frustration and exhaustion. Crohn's disease didn't end my story. It made it longer and added a few chapters and a couple cliffhangers along the way, but it's a good book. It shaped the way that I practice. It shaped the way that I advocate. It shaped the way that I care. It shaped the way that I lead. Over the years, I've become deeply involved in advocacy work, volunteering and speaking with the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, serving on committees, participating in conferences, and showing up in community spaces, because I believe that patients deserve more than treatment. They deserve a voice, dignity, and partnership, especially on the days when they don't have the strength to advocate for themselves. This podcast lives in that space between patients and providers. We're going to talk about the science, the strategy, the emotions, the awkward parts, the funny parts, the lessons learned, the faith and resilience it takes to live well in a body that sometimes writes its own rules. If you're a patient, a provider, a parent, or someone who just wants to understand chronic illness a little bit better, you belong here. Because sometimes the brand new bag is an ostomy, and sometimes it's perspective, courage, or purpose that you didn't see coming. However you found this podcast and whatever convinced you to stay and listen, thank you. I'm really glad that you're here. If this episode resonated with you, would you share it with someone who might need it? Send it to a friend, post it to your stories, text it to the person who's sitting next to you in the infusion chair right now. And if you have questions about short bowel, Crohn's disease, ostomies, parenting with a chronic illness, being both a patient and a provider, or anything else, send them my way. This space is for conversations, and I'd love for you to help shape them. Because the more we share, the more we normalize. And the more we normalize, the less alone people will feel. See you next time.